With ACC conference play about to start, I wanted to give my updated ACC college basketball rankings as we head into the conference play portion of the season. So I'll be going from number 18 to number 1 on where I think each of these teams in the ACC will finish in the conference standings. But before we get into the rankings, if you enjoy the content, please consider dropping a like on the video and subscribing to the channel. And now, let's jump into it. Starting off the rankings at number 18, I have Boston College, and I previously had them at number 16 in the preseason, but unfortunately, the Eagles have slipped even further heading into conference play. The non-conference resume explains why though, as they have losses to Central Connecticut State, FAU, Davidson, and Tulane already, which have exposed some major limitations, and Donald Hand Jr. was last season's ACC Most Improved Player, and he remains the clear bright spot for this roster, but beyond him, production has been hard to find, and with Coach Earl Grant likely nearing the end of his tenure with BC, this feels like a transitional year, and once ACC play begins, the schedule stiffens dramatically, and wins will be hard to come by, and I expect Boston College to remain near the bottom of the league unless something unexpected clicks. Georgia Tech is next, and they were ranked 14th in the preseason for me, but their narrow escapes and inconsistent play in the non-conference has pushed them down to number 17. The Yellow Jackets needed overtime to beat Maryland Eastern Shore and barely held off Georgia Southern, while they also trailed the likes of Southeast Louisiana and West Georgia at halftime, and those habits are dangerous heading into ACC play. And Georgia Tech is on a 3-game winning streak though, and they own a decent win over Penn State, but there's nothing on the resume that truly separates them to me, and they keep games closer than they should, which caps their ceiling, and with tougher competition coming, Georgia Tech needs cleaner execution to avoid sliding further down in the standings, but I think they're going to finish near the bottom. Next is the Pitt Panthers at number 16, and they've had an uneven non-conference showing to say the least, and Jeff Capel's group has struggled to replace departed stars like Jalan Lowe and Ish Leggett from last season's squad, and that's shown in losses like a blowout against West Virginia and a shocking home defeat to Quinnipiac. And with that being said though, Pitt hasn't been completely lifeless, as they have wins over Ohio State and a 30+ point victory over Penn State, which shows there's still some substance here on this roster, but the problem they have is consistency against the non-power opponents so far, and with ACC play next, the pressure will be even more, and Pitt just feels stuck in neutral unless something changes fast. Florida State stays put at number 15 in my rankings, and the Seminoles took care of business against weaker competition in the non-conference, but then they spiraled into a 5-game losing streak, highlighting their inability to beat higher class opponents. A close loss to Florida and Gainesville hinted at some potential early on, but Florida State just seems to lack a go-to scorer with no player inside the ACC's top 25 in scoring currently. But interestingly, they're still above the league in average in points, yet the wins haven't followed that, and 2 late non-conference wins have helped stabilize things slightly, but until Florida State proves it can close games against quality opponents, I have a hard time projecting them any higher in the ACC standings. Cal is one of the biggest winners from the non-conference play in the ACC so far, as they're off to a 12-1 start, and the Golden Bears own one of the ACC's best non-conference wins, as they knocked off UCLA for their first ranked victory since 2020 this season, and they have transfers like Chris Bell, Day Ames, and Justin Pippen that have headlined their balanced lineup that has 4 double-digit scores currently. And with that being said, the schedule has been lighter outside of UCLA and Kansas State, where Cal suffered its lone loss to the Wildcats, but a 9-game winning streak has them rolling into ACC play with their upcoming matchups against Louisville, Duke, UNC, and Virginia that will define whether this is a true contender or just a great early story, and I think they might be slowing down here once conference play begins. Stanford is the biggest riser from my preseason rankings to now, as they climbed up from number 18 all the way to number 13 in this ranking thanks to their steady progress under Kyle Smith, and despite losing NBA draft pick Maxime Reynaud, the Cardinal have rebounded nicely, led by freshman standout Ibuka Okori, who might be the most underrated freshman in the country. After early losses to Seattle and UNLV, Stanford has responded with quality wins over Minnesota and a good Colorado team, and Okori Corey's 32-point performance against Colorado highlighted his emergence as a playmaker and helped Stanford reach its best start since the 2019-2020 season, and this team is continuing to trend up at the right time, and if the Cardinal continue defending and getting consistent scoring from all parts of their roster, they could surprise some ACC teams early in conference play. Notre Dame comes in at number 12 after a mixed non-conference showing. They have early losses to Ohio State, Kansas, and Houston, which were all understandable, but the home upset loss to Purdue Fort Wayne raised some red flags to me. The absence of Marcus Burton was clearly felt in that game as Notre Dame's offense stalled late, but still, the Fighting Irish do already have wins over Rutgers, Missouri, and TCU, which show this group can compete when healthy, and they'll need Marcus Burton back here soon. But Micah Shrewsbury's team has enough structure and shooting to frustrate opponents in the ACC, but Burton's status looms large to me, and without him, ACC play could be an uphill battle night after night, but if he comes back, I do think they will shock some people. Virginia Tech lands at number 11 in the rankings, and Mike Young has quietly built a balanced roster, mixing transfers, returning pieces, and the 5-star freshman Neoclis Abdalis, who has been excellent to start the year. They already have wins over Providence and Colorado State, which should bolster their resume later on, but they did take some tough losses to St. Mary's and VCU, which exposed some defensive lapses. Injuries have also played a role, with Toby Lawal missing extended time and Afdalis being briefly sidelined as well, but when healthy, the Hokies have the ability to scare upper-tier ACC teams, but the question for them will be consistency, especially on the defensive end, as we get further into conference play. And jumping into the top 10, I have the Syracuse Orange coming in at the number 10 spot in the ACC rankings for me right now, and the Orange had an encouraging start, but they did hit a rough patch at the Players Era Championship, where they suffered 3 straight losses, but they were against elite competition in Houston, Kansas, and Iowa State, and were competitive in almost all of those games. But then they suffered a blowout loss to Hofstra, which has been a major setback for Syracuse. However, they did rebound with 3 straight wins after that to end non-conference play, but the injury to Donnie Freeman has been a big concern of mine. They do have a really good roster though. JJ Starling, Nathan George, Kyan Anthony all have looked great to start the year, so I do think there is some upside there, but the ACC play will quickly determine whether Syracuse is a middle tier team or capable of climbing higher. At number 9, I have SMU, who dropped slightly from my preseason ranking of number 7 after cooling off late in non-conference play. The Mustangs opened with 8 straight wins, including solid victories over Butler and Mississippi State, before stumbling against Vanderbilt and LSU. But still, Andy Enfield's squad boasts one of the ACC's premier guards in Boopy Miller, who's averaging 20 points per game and leading the league in assists. Jerome Pierre adds another scoring punch for the Mustangs, giving SMU some real firepower in their backcourt. And a home game against North Carolina is what they have to open ACC play, and that'll be very telling. And if SMU steadies defensively, they remain a dangerous tournament caliber team for me out of the ACC. Next at number 8 is Wake Forest, which is exactly where I had them end the preseason, and this still feels appropriate to me. 3 of the Demon Deacons' 4 losses have come against top 25 teams so far, with near misses against Michigan and Texas Tech, which has highlighted how competitive this team has been. Juke Harris has been one of the breakout sophomores in the country, as he's currently averaging 20 points per game, while the Demon Deacons also have Trevon Spillers, who provides veteran stability in the interior. They also have wins over Memphis and West Virginia, which helped the resume, but that blowout loss to Oklahoma did show some inconsistency to me. But Wake Forest isn't a bad team. The ACC really is just loaded, which is why I don't have them higher, and an upcoming matchup with NC State could set the tone for the Deacons in conference play. Clemson checks in at number 7 and is just 1 spot above its preseason ranking for me, and Brad Brownell's rebuilt roster continues the program's consistency that we've seen over the years, and so far in non-conference, they have wins over West Virginia, Georgia, Cincinnati, and South Carolina, and all 3 of their losses so far have come by 6 points or fewer, but blown leads remain a concern for me. The Tigers have struggled to close games and coughed up a massive lead against BYU in the second half, which would have given them a top 25 win if they could have held on, on, but still, this group looks elite in short bursts and has a history of improving as the season progresses under Brad Brownell, but the injuries are worth monitoring for the Tigers. But if Clemson can tighten their execution late and get healthy, they're firmly in the ACC's upper half with room to rise. At number 6, I have the NC State Wolfpack, and they did drop from number 4 in my preseason rankings due to their non-conference play, which has given me some concern. But Will Wade's rebuilt roster has shown flashes this season and is led by preseason ACC Player of the Year Darian Williams, but the inconsistency that they've had has plagued them. A 1-4 record against Power 5 teams is concerning, though the dominant win over Ole Miss did show that they can beat good teams. However, execution in the half court and perimeter defense remains their biggest issues, but computer rankings still view NC State favorably, which is a positive thing for me. And with ACC play ahead, the Wolfpack are a team that I think has one of the higher ceilings, but also one of the lower floors in the conference. Miami comes in at number 5 after a strong start under first-year head coach Jay Lucas, and after their 7-win season last year, the Hurricanes already have 11 wins, including solid victories over Georgetown and Ole Miss, and their 2 losses have come against top 25 opponents in BYU and Florida. And for this Miami team defensively, they rank inside the top 30 nationally. And then on the other end, they have Malik Renew, who anchors the offense and averages over 20 points per game. And while the schedule hasn't been overwhelming in the non-conference, the early returns for the Hurricanes are encouraging. And Miami opens conference play with one of the easier schedules in the ACC and could firmly establish themselves as one of the top teams in the conference. At number 4, I have North Carolina, which may surprise some people as Hubert Davis's group is off to its best start since the 2008-2009 title season, as they're 12-1 on the year so far, and I really like this North Carolina team. I just think there are a few others in the ACC that are just a little better and will finish higher in the standings, but the Tar Heels do have marquee wins over Kansas, Kentucky, and Ohio State so far, and the return of Seth Trimble has stabilized the perimeter, while Caleb Wilson and Henry Vasar form one of the league's best front court duos, and UNC hasn't lost since Thanksgiving against Michigan State, though they do have some defensive lapses that appear at times, but this team feels far more balanced than last year's, and with ACC play approaching, the Tar Heels look capable of challenging anyone, including Duke, at the top. Next at number 3 is Virginia, and they have been one of my favorite teams from what I've seen in the non-conference so far for the ACC, which is thanks to a dramatic stylistic transformation under Ryan Odom. The Cavaliers are averaging over 86 points per game, which is a massive jump from recent seasons, and freshman Tice DeRitter headlines the offense, but they have a strong supporting cast that includes Chance Mallory, Malik Thomas, Jakari White, and more, and their win over Maryland capped a strong non-conference run, and Virginia enters league play ranked inside the AP top 25 with an 11-1 record. The defense also has been solid so far, but the tempo and shooting are what have stood out to me the most, and if this offensive efficiency holds like I think it will, Virginia is a legitimate ACC title threat. And coming in at number 2, I have the Louisville Cardinals, which was where I had them in the preseason, and Pat Kelsey's second Cardinals team has already delivered some big wins, including wins over Kentucky, Indiana, Cincinnati, and Memphis, which has validated the hype that we had around this team in the preseason. Freshman point guard Mikael Brown Jr. fuels the offense, while Ryan Conwell and Isaac McNeely help provide some elite perimeter shooting, and then there's also some other guys that have been really good to start the year as well. And their 2 losses so far came against ranked teams in Arkansas and Tennessee, and Mikael Brown Jr. was actually sidelined against the Volunteers, so I'm not really looking too much into that one. And Louisville, their style is crazy as they take more threes than anyone in the country, and while the volatility has showed at times, especially in the game against Tennessee, the upside here is undeniable, and this team has Final Four potential to me. But coming in at the top spot in the ACC is Duke, and the Blue Devils remain the clear number 1 team entering ACC play, which is just as I projected in the preseason. And despite losing 5 starters from a Final Four team last year, John Shire's group hasn't skipped a beat, it seems. Freshman Cameron Boozer leads the Blue Devils across the board in scoring, rebounding, assists, and steals, while you have guys like Isaiah Evans and Patrick Ngamba who have expanded their roles seamlessly, and their wins over Texas, Kansas, and Arkansas anchor the resume, but they did just have their first loss of the year that came in a blown lead against Texas Tech at Madison Square Garden. And that loss feels more like a teaching moment than something that I'm really concerned of. So for me, Duke still enters conference play as the ACC title favorite. But that wraps it up for today's video. Let me know in the comments down below what your thoughts are on my ACC rankings heading into conference play. Was there a team that you thought I ranked way too high or way too low? Also, if you enjoyed the content, don't forget to drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.